तीसरा टॉपिक, long distance transport of water. At some earlier stage, you might have carried out an experiment where you had placed a twig bearing white flowers in colored water and had watched it turn colored. On examining the cut end of the twig after a few hours, you had noted the region through which the colored water moved. That experiment very easily demonstrates that the path of water movement is through the vascular bundles, more specifically the xylem. Now we have to go further and try and understand the mechanism of movement of water and other substances of a plant. Long distance transport of substances within a plant cannot be diffusion alone. Diffusion is a slow process. It can account for only short distance movement of molecules. For example, the movement of a molecule across a typical plant cell, about 50 micrometer, takes approximately 2.5 seconds. At this rate, can you calculate how many years it would take for the movement of molecules over a distance of 1 meter within a plant by diffusion alone? In large and complex organisms, often substances have to be moved to long distances. Sometimes the sites of production or absorption and sites of storage are too far from each other. Diffusion or active transport would not sufficient. Just suffice. A special long distance transport systems become necessary so as to move substances across long distances and at a much faster rate. Water and minerals and food are generally moved by a mass or bulk flow system. Mass flow is the movement of substances in bulk or in mass from one point to another as a result of pressure differences between the 2 points. It is characteristics of mass flow that substances, whether in solution or in suspension, are swept along at the same pace. As in flowing river, this is unlike diffusion where different substances move independently depending on their concentration gradient. Bulk flow can be achieved either through a positive hydrostatic pressure gradient, example garden hose, or negative hydrostatic pressure gradient, सक्शन थ्रू ए स्ट्रॉ. इसको याद रखना है, ये भूल मत जाना कि पॉजिटिव हाइड्रोस्टैटिक प्रेशर गार्डन होज में होता है. पॉजिटिव हाइड्रोस्टैटिक प्रेशर पीजी, पॉजिटिव गार्डन होज, और नेगेटिव हाइड्रोस्टैटिक प्रेशर ग्रेडियंट सक्शन थ्रू ए स्ट्रॉ, एनएस. ठीक है, पीजी एनएस, ये याद रखेंगे. उसके बाद है द बल्क मूवमेंट ऑफ सब्सटेंसेस through the conducting or vascular tissues of plants is the called translocation. Do you remember studying cross sections of roots, stems and leaves of higher plants and studying the vascular systems? The higher plants have highly specialized vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. Xylem is associated with translocation of mainly water, mineral salts, some organic nitrogen and hormones. यहाँ पर ना देखना, यहाँ पर हॉर्मोन्स जुड़ गया है, तो यहाँ पर हो गया मेनली वाटर, मिनरल, सम ऑर्गेनिक नाइट्रोजन एंड हॉर्मोन्स. ये पूछा हुआ था, यहीं पर कंफ्यूजन था, हॉर्मोन्स होता है कि नहीं होता, होता है, नाइट्रोजन हॉर्मोन्स होता है. फ्रॉम रूट्स टू द एरियल पार्ट्स ऑफ द प्लांट्स, द फ्लोएम ट्रांसलोकेट ए वेराइटी ऑफ ऑर्गेनिक एंड इनऑर्गेनिक सॉल्यूट्स. तो फ्लोएम जो है वो ऑर्गेनिक और इनऑर्गेनिक दोनों पास करता है. मेनली फ्रॉम द लिप्स टू द अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द plant. How do plants absorb water? We know that the roots absorb most of the water that goes into the plants. Obviously, that is why we apply water to the soil, not on the leaves. कभी भी हम वाटर सोयल में ही देते हैं, जड़ में ही देते हैं, कभी भी हम लीफ में नहीं देते हैं, वो एब्जॉर्ब नहीं करता है, वो पता होना चाहिए. वहाँ से गैसेस एक्सचेंज ओनली होता है. द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ absorption of water and minerals is more specifically the function of the root hairs that are present in millions at the tip of the roots. सही है. Root hairs are thin walled cylinder extensions of root epidermal cells that greatly increase the surface area for absorption. Water is absorbed along with mineral solutes by the root hairs purely by diffusion. Once water is absorbed by the root hairs, it can move deeper into root layers by two distinct pathways, apoplast or symplast. The apoplast is the system of adjacent cell wall that is continuous throughout the plant except at the Casparian straps of the endodermis. मतलब कैस्पेरियन स्ट्रैप्स है वहाँ पे नहीं होता है, बाकी हर जगह होता है. ठीक है. वहाँ पे सिर्फ क्या होता है, सिम्प्लास्ट होता है, एपोप्लास्ट नहीं होता है. Casparian straps of the endodermis. In the roots, the apoplastic movement of water occurs exclusively through the intercellular spaces and the walls of the cells. तो इसमें हम देख सकते हैं कि जो डार्क कलर से वो एपोप्लास्ट है और जो लाइट कलर से वो सिम्प्लास्ट है. डार्क कलर है जो वो बाउंड्री पे है और जो लाइट कलर है वो बीच में है. तो और जो पास कर रहा है जहाँ से वाटर, उसको हम प्लाज्मोडेस्माटा कहते हैं. सबसे आउटर लेयर प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन है इसमें. तो पहले इसको याद कैसे रखेंगे, ECEP. क्या याद रखेंगे, ECP, एपिडर्मिस, कॉर्टेक्स, एंडोडर्मिस, पेरिसाइकल, ECEP. ठीक है. और लास्ट में क्या, जाइलम है. अच्छा, तो फिर वहाँ कैस्पेरियन स्टेप्स कहाँ है, पाथवे वाटर मूवमेंट इन द रूट में. तो कैस्पेरियन स्टेप्स एंडोडर्मिस में, एंडोसी, ऐसे कुछ याद रखो, एंडोसी, एंडोडर्मिस, कैस्पेरियन स्टेप्स, ECEP बस पहले याद रखना है. ठीक है. मूवमेंट थ्रू द एपोप्लास्ट does not involve crossing the cell membrane. The movement is depend on the gradient. The apoplast does not provide any barrier to water movement and water movement is through mass flow. ये याद रखना है कि कौन है वो, एपोप्लास्ट. एपोप्लास्ट जो है बाहर वाला वो एक भी बैरियर प्रोवाइड नहीं कर रहा है. And water movement is through mass flow. As water evaporates into the intercellular spaces or atmosphere, tension develops in the continuous stream of water in the apoplast. Hence, mass flow of water occurs due to the adhesive and cohesive properties of water. ठीक है. The symplastic system is the system of interconnected protoplast. Neighboring cells are connected through cytoplasmic strands that extend through plasmodesmata. During symplastic movement, the water travels through the cells, their cytoplasm. Intercellular movement is through the plasmodesmata. Water has to enter the cells through the cell membrane. Hence, the movement is relatively slower. Movement is again down a potential gradient. Symplastic movement may be aided by cytoplasmic streaming. You may have observed cytoplasmic streaming in cells of the hydra leaf. तो cytoplasmic streaming क्या होता है, किस में होता है, हाइड्रा लीफ में. द मूवमेंट ऑफ क्लोरोप्लास्ट ड्यू टू स्ट्रीमिंग इज इजिली विजिबल. हम तुमको बताते हैं कि साइटोप्लाज्मिक स्ट्रीमिंग क्या होता है. ये साइटोप्लाज्मिक स्ट्रीमिंग एक्चुअली सेल के अंदर ही होता है और बस थोड़ा सा पोजीशन चेंज कर लेता है. और चेंज कहाँ करेगा, सेल के अंदर ही, सेल के बाहर कुछ नहीं होगा. जैसे अगर कोई सनलाइट पड़ रहा है और अगर वो हॉरिजॉन्टल है तो अगर एब्जॉर्ब करना हो तो थोड़ा सा वो वर्टिकल हो जाएगा क्लोरोप्लास्ट. ठीक है. अगर उसको स्कैप करना हो दोपहर में तो अगर वो वर्टिकल है तो थोड़ा सा वो हॉरिजॉन्टल हो जाएगा. तो ये क्या हुआ, इसी को हम साइटोप्लाज्मिक स्ट्रीमिंग कहते हैं. ठीक है. Most of the water flow in the roots occurs via the apoplast since the cortical cells are loosely packed and hence offer no resistance to water movement. However, The inner boundary of the cortex, the endodermis, is impervious to water because of a band of suberized matrix called Casparian strap. Suberized है, suberin protein का ये बना होता है. Water molecules are unable to penetrate the layer, so they are directed to wall regions that are not suberized into the cells proper through the membranes. The water then moves through the symplast and again crosses a membrane to reach the cells of the xylem. The movement of water through the root layers is ultimately symplastic in the endodermis. This is the only way water and other solutes can enter the vascular cylinder. Once inside the xylem, water is again free to move between cells as well as through them. In young roots, water enters directly into the xylem vessels and out tracheids. These are non-living conduits and so are parts of the apoplast. The path of water and mineral ions into the root vascular is summarized. देखो इस फिगर में हम तुमको बताते हैं मूवमेंट इसमें एक्चुअल में दिया हुआ कि सिम्प्लास्टिक एंड एपोप्लास्टिक पाथवेज symplastic and apoplastic pathways of water and ion absorption and movement in roots. Symplastic pathway हो गया पहला है symplastic, उसके बाद बीच में आएगा एपोप्लास्टिक और इंडोडर्मिस का वो स्ट्रैप बना हुआ इंडोडर्मिस है, वहाँ पर एक कैस्पेरियन स्ट्रैप्स है, हम जो बताए थे इंडोसी, और ये जाइलम है, फ्लोएम है, पेरीसाइकिल है. तो कैस्पेरियन स्ट्रैप्स इंडोडर्मिस के बाद पेरीसाइकिल है, तो इसको ऐसे याद रखेंगे. ECEP याद रखते थे और आउटर लेयर क्या था एपोप्लास्ट और इनर लेयर क्या था सिम्प्लास्ट. सही है, ACEP याद रखेंगे काफ़ी है. एपिडर्मिस, कॉर्टेक्स, इंडोडर्मिस और पेरीसाइकिल. Some plants have additional structure associated with them that help in water and mineral absorption. A mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association of a fungus with root system. The fungus filament form a network around the young root or they penetrate the root cells. The hyphae have a very large surface area that absorb mineral ions and water from the soil from a much larger volume of soil that perhaps a root cannot do. Fungus provides mineral and water to the roots. In turn, roots provide sugar and nitrogen containing compounds to the mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza को क्या क्या मिलता है? Sugar मिलता है और nitrogen containing compounds. Some plants have an obligate association with the mycorrhiza. For example, Pinus seed cannot germinate and establish without the presence of mycorrhiza. इसको हम ऐसे याद रखेंगे. PM प्रधानमंत्री, PM ठीक है, प्राइम मिनिस्टर. पाइनस माइकोराजा, पाइनस माइकोराजा के बिना नहीं रह सकता है, याद रहेगा. वाटर मूवमेंट of a plant. We looked at how plant absorb water from the soil and move it into the vascular tissues. We now have to try and understand how this water is transported to various parts of the plant. Is the water movement active or is it still passive? Since the water has to be moved up a stem against gravity that provides the energy for this. बिल्कुल ग्रेविटी अगेंस्ट है तो एनर्जी हमको देना पड़ेगा. इसमें पहला है रूट प्रेशर. As various ions from the soil are actively transported into the vascular tissues of the roots, water flows its potential gradient and increases the pressure inside the xylem. This positive pressure is the called root pressure. Root pressure का होता है पॉजिटिव होता है and can be responsible for pushing up water to a small heights in the stem. How can we see that root pressure exists? Choose a small soft stemmed plant and on a day when there is the plenty of atmospheric moisture, cut the stem horizontally near the base with a sharp blade. Early in the morning, you will soon see drops of solution ooze out of the cut stem. This comes out due to the positive root pressure. If you fix a rubber tube to the cut stem as a sleeve, you can actually collect and measure the rate of exudation and also determine the composition of the exudates. Effects of root pressure is also observable at night and early morning when evaporation is low and excess water collects in the form of droplets around a special openings of veins near the tip of grass blades. Tip of grass blades and leaves of many herbaceous parts. Such water loss in its liquid phase is also known as guttation. Root pressure can at best only provide a modest push in the overall process of water transport. They obviously do not play a major role in water movement up tall trees. The greatest contribution of root pressure may be to reestablish the continuous chains of water molecules in the xylem, which often break under the enormous tensions created by transpiration. Root pressure does not account for the majority of water transport. Most plants meet their need by transpiratory pull. अब आते हैं transpiration pull. Despite the absence of a heart or circulatory system in plants, the upward movement of water through the xylem in plants can achieve fairly high rates up to 15 meters per hour. However, is this movement accomplished? A long-standing question is whether water is pushed or pulled through the plant. Most researchers agree that water is mainly pulled through the plant and that driving force for this process is transpiration from the lips. हमेशा याद रखना, नीट में कितना बार आता है यार मैट्रिक्स मैच क्वेश्चन में, और उसमें सीधा पूछा जाता है कि ये पुल होता है कि पुश होता है. तो प्लांट कभी ऑब्जर्व करेगा तो क्या करेगा, पुल करेगा. द रेफर टू एज द cohesion tension transpiration pulled model of water transport. But what generates this transpirational pull? Water is transient in plants. Water कैसा होता है, transient होता है in plant में. Less than 1% of water reaching leaves is used in photosynthesis. मतलब 1% से भी कम होता है जो वाटर यूज होता है photosynthesis में and plant growth में. Most of it is lost through the stomata in the leaves. Water is lost is known as transpiration. You have studied transpiration in an earlier class by enclosing a healthy plant in polythene bag and observing the droplets of water formed inside the bag. You could also study water loss from a leaf using cobalt chloride paper which turns color on absorbing water. तो अब नेक्स्ट हम टॉपिक पढ़ेंगे कल, वो है ट्रांसपायरेशन.